Hello and welcome to Fireside Chats here at the Influencer Series hosted by the Alchemist Accelerator. These are timely conversations with tech leaders about what's on their mind currently. Let's jump in. We are here with Kristian Marquez. Kristian is the CEO of Finstrat Management. Finstrat does tech-enabled professional services. You'll see them across the startup ecosystem in a variety of different ways. And Kristian has a bachelor's in engineering from the Navy. Is that right?
That's right.
So that's also fascinating and interesting.
Fun story.
And now Liz, and home is Montana.
Yes, Bozeman.
Is in Bozeman, Montana. So there's a lot of interesting perspectives with which you see the world, and also you see a wide swath of startups and companies through Finstrat as well. So,
that's right.
Welcome, Kristian. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Ravi.
And I'm curious what you were presenting today.
So, super excited to be participating in this influencer series, and as you pointed out, serving as a roundtable leader, and really exciting because they've given an opportunity to pick a fun and perhaps divisive.
Yes, that's the intention, is to be controversial. Yeah. So we also asked Kristian, even if it's against his better nature, to try to stir controversy. So that was his task.
And so I just came out of my session. I think mission accomplished.
Oh, good.
Yes, it was great. We had lively debate on either side of the table, and people did pick sides. We were evenly divided, so we're on the right track. But in this case, I asked the question of whether or not the days of standalone software are numbered.
Okay.
Or at a minimum, will their valuations become negligible?
Okay.
Given the fact that there are now so many artificial intelligence-driven coding platforms that are out there that can do the job of a few people what historically taken hundreds.
And so that's not, just to make sure I'm understanding, that's you wouldn't classify AI-driven applications as standalone software? What's the definition of standalone software?
So probably let me start with the opposite.
Okay.
Anything that's married to hardware, I think, is in a great place.
Okay.
So a great example would be an iPhone, a Tesla.
Okay.
Anything that has a network effect, perhaps Slack is a good example, where its adoption creates its value. By consequence, the ability to collect data. You can have a remote sensor or a piece of software that can collect information where the value of the data becomes more valuable than the actual code that's running the collection.
I see.
And so, I don't want to start naming names, but you can start to imagine software programs that are tools that are totally standalone. Mm-hmm. There are a whole host that we use. I'll name one because it's actually a great tool. We use it regularly, but Intuit's QuickBooks online. They're in a unique place given that they're an incumbent with great software.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I'd want to be their competitor right now. Not only having to take market share, but necessarily being in a position where you're going to spend a lot of money developing an enterprise piece of software where a competitor can come along and do something similar for the fraction of the cost.
So you would want to be their competitor. You're saying that is an attractive market to attack.
No, apologies. I'm saying the contrary. I wouldn't want to be.
Oh, you wouldn't want to play in that same space.
Because they're incumbent. And so for entrepreneurs now who are looking for opportunities to fix problems, I think you have to be very thoughtful of where you're going to go if you're going to bring to market a standalone point solution.
Because it sounds like what you're saying is that the software unhinged or the algorithm is commodity.
That's right.
And so the asset is going to be whatever it's attached to. So that is going to be either hardware, data, or a network effect, a community. Okay.
You hit it.
Okay. Interesting. And what the consensus around the room that you were talking to, it was divided equally.
It was divided evenly.
Okay.
And so we were fortunate. We had financial VCs, CVCs in the room. Some who did investment in software. Some were exclusively hardware. Mm-hmm. But the people who were against the thesis really were just timing. And so, I put out in the room the next 2 to 5 years. Some people thought it would take longer. But there was a general consensus that at least valuations should deflate.
Okay.
Because how do you value or how do you justify, a unicorn valuation when it takes a fraction of the people to build the company?
And so then the competitive moat has to be around something that's external to the technology itself. It's going to be something else. And yeah.
Yeah. So if there's truth to this thesis, then it would makes the investment case for hardware. And you can probably look at macroeconomic factors like nearshoring that's currently taking place as governments are becoming more sensitive to their supply chains. And so question becomes, is there a role for hardware? And we're focused predominantly on the U.S., but is there a bigger role for hardware, knowing that manufacturing is coming back to the country?
Do you think that's actually so? Are you in favor of the movement towards more tariffs and bringing traditional manufacturing back to the U.S.?
Oh, it's a good question. I will start by saying I am familiar with the concept of tariffs, but I don't know that I'm qualified to know the intricacies of the consequences. From what I have read, my sense is that a lot of foreign countries place tariffs on American imports, and the U.S. doesn't.
Okay.
Part of that has been strategic, in so much as it has enabled the U.S. to be the reserve currency of the world. While it still may be important to price, the majority of the world's commodities in dollars, I think it may be more important, at least to the current administration, to take care of the middle class. And so by consequence of having this lopsided tariff, you see the hollowing out of manufacturing in the U.S. And bringing those jobs back to the U.S. would assist accomplish the goal of helping the middle class.
Okay. And so that's one secular trend that you think is an opportunity.
At least for the next 4 years. Whether or not that continues down the road, if I'm a betting person, which I am, I say it is. Only because I think there's a bigger global theme that's taking place, and that's just the end of a global debt supercycle, where there's been so much inexpensive financing that's been made available that still needs to work its way out of the system. And until that does, I think you're going to see a lot more scrutiny on businesses that can be at least break even versus, the historical, hey, let's just keep throwing hundreds of millions, if not billions, to get this until they turn a profit.
And do you see that from also the perspective of Finstrat? Are you seeing trends in venture-backed companies prioritizing profitability over growth?
I am 100%.
Do you guys see that? Do you guys have any insights, and do you track that across the portfolio? What the trade-offs are right now and where people are optimizing?
Oh, we do. But I should start off by saying that as a firm, we generally work with businesses that are starting to approach something that resembles product market fit.
Okay. So
generally that's right before an A.
Okay.
Called an A.
Okay. Because there's all this conundrum that I think founders have. Do they optimize for growth to get the VCs incented to have FOMO and back them at the expense of profitability? But there's a risk when you do that you're going to be really desperate for the cash. Or do you prioritize profitability so you can control your own fate, but then risk not having nonlinear growth to signal that you're a breakout?
I think the good news is it's both. I think it's for the companies that have material top line. You will continue to see VCs who will totally be fine with operating at a loss.
Okay.
Because not all VCs are pitching 10x returns to their LPs. There are absolutely out there who will say, hey, we'll as a thesis, we'll go for singles. So let's call it 3x. But if you have a great growth story, because you're in the right place at the right time, absolutely.
And what numbers do you think you need to have a great growth story to catalyze VC interest?
Oh my gosh. I'm not a VC, but having talked to VCs, 100% growth I think is material.
Year over year?
Year over year. Obviously it depends what you're starting with.
Okay.
But 100%, anything greater than 100%, I think you're going to get somebody's attention.
Okay. And then can I ask you, because you're the only, I think, roundtable leader we have right now that's from the armed forces, that has an armed forces background. I know you're not from the armed forces, but you're trained in the Navy. Do you have a perspective on what's happening right now on the world stage with militarily, and if there's opportunities there? And if you don't want to talk about it, we also don't need to.
No, that's all right. It was interesting. I'm a big fan of Naval Ravikant. And
Naval. I think your Navy background probably is informing that. But my Indian background is going to be like, Naval. No, it's okay.
So I think he recently tweeted something to the effect of that if unless you're producing your own drones, you're going to become a vassal state. And I don't know if he has a military background, but I would tend to agree with this assessment. I think the cost to conduct warfare is going to come down materially because, a fleet of drones are very difficult to combat against. And so if you think about force projection, I mean, typically what has it been? It's been an Air Force carrier group, which is very large. And so now if all of a sudden you're faced with a swarm of drones, which costs a fraction of the cost to build a nuclear aircraft carrier, let alone operate it, you have a different set of issues that you're thinking about contending with.
And so you think we're going to have more war?
I think you have to define war. I think if I had to tell you, it would be something that resembles Cold War. That's more IT based than it would traditional conventional war.
And then how does that reconcile with the idea that you're going to have all these like technical wasps, sort of these drones that are really inexpensive that can do damage?
Well, I don't know. So if you think about nuclear deterrence, historically the idea was you're not going to use them.
Yeah, but
they exist.
Yeah.
And so is it plausible that drones, if someone a neighboring country has a fleet of drones, possible.
Yeah.
But then you have to consider what role does splinter groups, or bad actors who want to fund a terrorist cell and have access to drones. How does that change things?
But do you think the next 100 years are going to have less physical conflict, or I don't know if that's the right term, but less actual warfare, armed warfare, not cold warfare, but like actual conflict versus the last 100?
I would say it's a good question, Matt. I don't know that I've necessarily thought about this before, but it's fun. So
yeah,
and you're recording this, so then someone can come back and see whether or not I was right. So I think most people have been talking about the impact that humans are having on the climate.
Yeah,
I'm not convinced that's the right conversation we have.
What is the right conversation?
The lack of new children being born in developed nations. And so if you look at population growth for Japan, much of Europe, to a degree the US, I mean, we're not having enough kids to replace the population. Mm-hmm. And so Russia, another great example. Mm-hmm. And so we should be asking what's the consequence of that. Mm-hmm. I've heard geopoliticists talking that one of the reasons Vladimir Putin is fine being aggressive is he knows that unless he, and I'm way outside of my skis, but over my skis, but unless he takes steps to secure Russia's future, there won't be a Russia. Arguably, same thing with China.
Because of the birth rate, because the next generation is going to keep
exacerbated by the fact that they had a one-child policy for the longest time.
Yeah,
and so now their age pyramids are upside down. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, where there's a problem, there's an entrepreneur who can solve things. And I would tell you that the real value of Tesla is not the cars per se; it's the data that those cars accumulate that are going to be fed into Optimus, and the potential for those robots to come in and do tasks in the absence of a population. That's a wild card. In the absence of robotics really taking over, could I see a scenario where a dying country gets aggressive to save itself? It's possible. I think it depends on the country, depends on the location.
So the fear is that the shrinking population is going to invite others to take it over?
Why?
Or it just won't be able to economically sustain itself?
Well, I would just say as a survival mechanism, what do you do when you know you're about to die?
Are you about to die, though? I feel like, aren't we overpopulated? Isn't that the other narrative?
Well, that's
isn't it sort of a healthy diet versus
the data? I don't know that that's the case.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, there are only a handful. National Geographic recently published the list of countries that have a birth rate greater than 2.1 as a replacement.
I know, but we so dominate the world. I mean, if humans are the least species, I think that's about to go extinct. But fair enough. I understand. Fair enough. And the entrepreneurial opportunity then was to do more with less. With tech-enabled robots to do what your kids would have done for you.
Yeah. So fun things that I'm bullish on. AI, but it's the application. So robotics.
Yep.
Very bullish. I'm still very bullish on materials, which you never hear anyone talking about. If you could come up with next generation alloy, if you could reduce the weight of a starship or a truck, that's material because it requires less energy. Very bullish on energy. Depending on who you talk to, fusion is around the corner. Very big deal. No one's talked about nanotech for a while, but I'll lump that in with materials. I hear you. I'm an optimist. And I think the future's bright. And I would much rather be alive today than I would in the early 1900s or before then. World's going to change,
but it's still utopian, not dystopian. New challenges, which are opportunities for startups.
Yes.
And software's getting commoditized. The real bottleneck to innovation now is on the hardware side and materials and nano.
I think that's where the opportunity is.
That makes sense. So the way that we close these, Kristian, is if you want, you can share a final 6-word takeaway that you want to share with the group. So in 6 words or less, a final takeaway. It's sort of modeled after Ernest Hemingway being challenged with writing a novel in 6 words. I know that might be a lot, so you can think about that as you sort of metabolize it. Not no excessive pressure, but anything that you would want to relay as a final piece of advice to.
Preservation and determination are omnipotent.
Ooh, that's good. Okay. Well, thank you, Kristian. We'll end it with that.
Thank you,
Okay. And that's our show. Thanks for listening. Please stay tuned for more discussions as well. You can also check out our website, alchemistaccelerator.com, to learn more about our Startup Accelerator program and to get in touch. We'd love to hear from you.